Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here to see our panel, and thank you very much for that kind introduction. So my name is Jacqueline Assar, and I'm going to be speaking with the co-founders of HoloPay. So this is Schneider, Kachina and Anish, Dhesikan, and we're very lucky to have Julie Young, the CEO of Shift here, and she has been such a big part of our story. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what HoloPay is and really the story that brought us here today to share some learnings from our project. So the way that we came up with HoloPay was we were actually at a hackathon, which, as I'm sure many of you know, is the place that many great ideas start. And this hackathon was sponsored by Discover Payments. And the challenge that they gave to our team was, how can you use augmented reality for the future of payments and the future of commerce? And this was a challenge that we were so excited to dive in. And we had an option of various tools, right? We could do virtual reality headsets. We could do anything we wanted with augmented reality. And where we really landed was we want to create an experience that we really believe will be the future of payments and will also allow for a commerce experience that you would not be able to have without augmented reality. So we settled on the Microsoft HoloLens, and the reason that we settled on that was because we wanted an experience for a future where we all will be wearing devices and that we won't be looking at augmented reality through our phones. And so what we wanted to do was use the HoloLens to create an experience that would let any of us shop our world, right? So right now when you want to shop, what do? You go to a store, you go online, and there's a lot of sort of thought into that process, but we thought about what if every day, anywhere you were, if you saw an outfit that you liked, you could look at it, scan it, and then be able to actually purchase on the spot with one gesture pay. We were really inspired by the idea of one-click pay and what that would look like in a world in which we all have access to augmented reality. And so we were very fortunate to win this hackathon with our proof of concept, which we're very excited to share with you today. And then the most amazing thing that happened to our team was that we posted a video in the Facebook Women in VR group, which Julie also moderates, and she reached out to us from Shift and said, hey, Microsoft wants to do a spotlight program with us. Would you guys be willing to do that? And we ended up building out our product further for that. And so we'll share with you the video that came from that as well. So is there? Yes. So as I discussed, let's go back. Is it possible to go back to the, here we go. So as I discussed, the way that HoloPay works in this proof of concept is that for this initial phase, we use Vuforia. And this is great because it allows us to have object recognition. So for example, if we're at this conference and you see a bag that you really like, and you want to see the brand of that, you can actually use the HoloLens to scan that, and then that will pull up real-time purchasing information. And the hardware, as I mentioned, is the Microsoft HoloLens. And then the interface is really where we dove in, and we're very excited to share with you some UX and UI elements. Because for us, as you can imagine, anytime we bring in augmented reality to this use case, it's not about overwhelming your view. It's about how can you have really intentional design that is there to provide a solution for what you need, but doesn't overwhelm that space. And next, we'll share with you the video that came out of the Microsoft Shift Spotlight. So we were at a hackathon, and we really wanted to create something that was a product that we would all use every day. And so we said, what can we create using the HoloLens, which is a technology that we all love, and have it be something that we would use on a day-to-day basis?
HoloPay allows you to shop your world. It's a mixed reality application that allows users to quickly purchase items that they see on the street with one gesture. The Microsoft HoloLens is a mixed reality headset. It combines the virtual world and the real world. We can add things to your real world that add new objects into your world.
So when we designed the idea for HoloPay, there are so many times that you're walking on the street and you see a cute outfit and you really want to know where the person got it, but you can't necessarily walk up to them and ask. And so we really thought about this future scenario where if everyone has a headset, we can build a product for it that lets people see items they like and just purchase it on the street. I believe that mixed reality will change the future of payments by removing the distance from what the user wants to do or wants to purchase and the technology involved.
Our team felt very strongly that in creating an application for mixed reality that we utilize as minimal of a UI as possible. That minimalism and that intentionalism with UI is something that's very important to us, and we feel it's very important to mixed reality's future in general.
One of the processes we go through is we just throw out every single idea that we have. We just kind of storyboard. We think about every single thing we're looking to create, and we just try to figure out ways to hack it together, basically find ways to integrate it into our work.
So Vuforia is an image recognition, so it uses the camera in the HoloLens to recognize specific images, and then you can place things on top of that image. So for example, we have a specific handbag. By looking at that handbag, it'll immediately recognize which handbag it is and give you all the information about it, like reviews, ratings, and you can purchase it right there.
Mixed reality is fantastic in terms of the projection, but HoloLens took it one step further and thought about what are some really intuitive gestures for people to actually use this device.
And so what we did was we combined this select gesture with some machine vision to create this one gesture payment. And we really want to make it the quickest and simplest gesture to purchase it.
Creating for mixed reality can seem really intimidating. The best advice that I ever got, and the advice that I would give to anyone that wants to get involved, is that there's no better way to learn than to just do it.
All that it comes down to is just how much you want to change the world and how much you want to find the opportunity and go for it.
Working with this team is a phenomenal process. It's the most incredible thing when the people you work with are actually your heroes in the space. I learn from these guys every day, and it's just an honor to work with them. And so, thank you. So now I'm going to hand it over to Julie Young. And like I said, I encourage all of you to check out Shift, her amazing organization that is dedicated to promoting and supporting diverse voices in the immersive technology industry. And it would be, frankly, an understatement to say that none of us would be here without her support and her mentorship and her encouragement. So we're really honored, Julie, that you're here to moderate this with us. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you so much for that very, very, very kind intro. So I guess we'll just jump right into it. So I met this team, as I said, through like the Shift Spotlight program that we did with Microsoft, where we went around the world and found amazing projects that were created by diverse voices that were made using HoloLens. And then we put together these video spotlights about them. And one of the things that I found really inspiring about this team in particular is that they have the best sort of like prototyping attitude ever. You know, they all have that personality where you're the kind of person on the team that you just want to be around. You want them to be on your team because they have such good energy and they're just committed to rapid prototyping, getting things done. I mean, this is one of many projects that this team has built together. So that's kind of my first question for you guys is, can you talk a little bit about how you came together as a team and then how you kind of continued to work together? I know you all have really different backgrounds too, so maybe go into that a bit.
Sure. So, is this on? So we met, Anish, Kachina, and I met at the Reality Virtually Hackathon at the MIT Media Lab, which was the world's largest VR AR hackathon at the time. And we actually met because we couldn't find anyone that wanted to work with us. And we ended up winning the whole thing and getting just, amazing levels of support from so many different companies in this space, including HTC and Samsung. And then Kachina worked with Kat and brought her to the Discover Hackathon. And basically from that first time that we worked together as a group, we were like, wow, there's something really special here. We all come from different backgrounds. We have different skill sets, but we just have so much fun together. So it was kind of a crazy story that brought us together.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what each of your roles on the project and what your strengths are?
Yeah, I'll start here. We'll go this way. So I do mostly development and a little bit of design. The cool thing about our team is that everyone is actually like product and marketing focused as well. So we really have like a really good understanding of how to really make it customer focused. And even developers, designers, and marketing and product people can all like relate to making sure that the customer has the best experience.
Yeah, so being a user experience designer, I think I work pretty closely with everybody on this team. Anish with some of the development support and Kat with some of the UI support. But I think the process has been based mostly in trying to figure out everything that we find compelling about our use case and then figuring out a way to apply that to the development as opposed to letting the development drive our user experience, user interaction, or marketing set. I think we kind of do it in a different way than a lot of other teams have kind of put their products together.
So for the HoloPay project in particular, I was responsible for a lot of the interface design, but I have a background in architecture and urban planning. So a lot of what we're focusing on right now in design is figuring out how we take the success of IRL interactions that happen in places across the world every day and take the pieces of them that work, integrate UI design that makes AR experiences accessible and easy to understand, and then create these truly spatial experiences from that background.
Yeah, and I focus mostly on product strategy and management, so making sure that for all of these prototypes that we're actually getting them in the hands of people to use them, and that our projects find a life outside of our heads.
Awesome. Can you guys talk a little bit about, you alluded to this a bit in the intro about drawing inspiration from Amazon and other like payment UIs that you really liked. Can you talk a little bit about how, where that inspiration came from? Like what other products did you look at? Just walk us through that whole process.
So I think a lot of that definitely started with the user profile and understanding how you can translate a lot of the information that you gather from your experience online into an interface that you can interact with through AR, whether it's a heads-up display or a mobile device. I think what interested us in the HoloLens was that it is probably the easiest heads-up display for AR to work with. Although right now I believe mobile device is probably going to consistently be the platform that we'll be working with. But yeah, I think if you want to speak a little bit to it as well.
Yeah, so I think when we initially started exploring what it would mean to create a fintech product, we started to look at the user experience that's present in a lot of online shopping and the evolution of removing barriers to discovery of an object or an item that you want to purchase and then the actual transaction that happens. I think something that we had to work through in design in particular and sort of accept responsibility for is that with these heads-up displays, people are wearing them all the time, so we have to bear the responsibility of when is the appropriate time to prompt a user with that type of information, and then not to have it be like a bug on a windshield effect where you get all of these pop-ups, but actually create a really meaningful experience where people can connect with products when they want them, but that the interface is not there at all when you're not sort of in that discovery mode for shopping.
Can you talk a little bit about any of the roadblocks you faced during development or maybe just during sort of concept phase?
Yeah, so one of the things that we really had a little trouble doing was integrating with the payment platforms. So one thing that's really tough is like credit card authorizations or like PayPal integration. Those things, you know, the easiest to work with has been PayPal so far, but definitely there's a lot of security involved, especially when you have such a connected device like the HoloLens that, you know, has Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and everything, and has to be as secure as paying through, you know, any other platform. So that was definitely the most challenging.
Okay. Okay, here's a good one. How does your team define the line between guiding a user through interface versus manipulation? Kat, you sort of alluded to this before, but do you have anything to expand on?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an important aspect for all of us who are going to create in AR because we are creating this intimate form of technology that's with you at all times. I think it's something that I ask myself all the time. Are we leading the user to what they want, or are we leading the user to what we want them to look at? So leaving room for agency in an experience and accepting the fact that a user may not do exactly what you want them to do, and preparing for that type of like almost Easter egg. Like anything that we create, we want people to be able to take it on and give it a life of its own through their eyes, not necessarily through the way that we expect them to.
I was going to say also online you get kind of a bombardment of the same type of advertising over and over again, and that can be very frustrating. I know recently I was texting with somebody and about a pair of shoes called Allbirds, and I had never Googled them. And then my advertising for the next 2 weeks had just been Allbirds, and that wasn't even particular to me. So that's the problem that you run into, I think, with online advertising. It's just pulling from your search history, from your text messages, but we won't get into that. That's the security thing all over again. But it doesn't feel personal. So it really does come down to that user profile, and then also having the ability to understand your limits on that profile. So we had talked about minimal UI. I think that's really important, but also minimal UI can be like the 2 advertisements that you have on the edge of your Google screen. What if you want to expand that? So you're able to control those settings of how you want to interact with the world, whether or not you want to, if you see something you like, you want to see like 60 other things that relate to that, or you just want to know where to get that one item. I think that's where kind of that control and feeling like you can understand your product a little bit better comes in. And then especially because we were working with a payments platform, integrating this idea of budget, I think, was really important. And being able to not just be strategically advertised to, but to kind of control your limits on your budget and have your budget feed back into the application.
So you guys, the main thing that you built on top of was Vuforia. Can you talk a little bit about the decision to use that? And I know this was sort of like a proof of concept, like a working prototype. But like I know you probably had to work with a smaller set of data. But can you talk about what a future version of HoloPay might look like, where that data might come from, or if you might rely on another platform?
Yeah, so Vuforia is really cool because it's really quick to develop using Vuforia in Unity. Basically, we had 1 weekend to develop our proof of concept, so we wanted to make something that showed off the capability to basically recognize objects, recognize images, and then be able to see information about it and purchase it. And so we built that using Vuforia and the image recognition that actually recognizes certain tags and like labels on specific objects. In the future, we definitely want to have like true object recognition, which would use a combination of the image recognition and the 3D data that you get from the HoloLens. And Vuforia already has sort of like a pseudo 3D object recognition, but what we want to do is sort of combine the 3D data that you get from the HoloLens, which is really specific, to actually recognize objects more accurately. And then beyond that, we want to also connect to databases. We actually, on our trip to Microsoft, we spoke with a bunch of people on their marketing teams and their product teams, and they have databases for all of their products, and they connected with us on how to integrate with their products. And so basically we would have to pull from a database, and they would have all the images for us, and they would have all the user reviews, all the info, and then we would just basically pull that automatically. And so pulling from those databases is really like the future of this kind of thing, where whether that database is the huge database of Amazon or the small database of a mom and pop shop, you can pretty much make different applications for those services.
And so you guys have developed a lot of different types of projects together: VR, AR, MR, anything and everything. How is developing for the HoloLens different from developing for other platforms, or for mobile AR or for VR?
Yeah, so I'll say from like a development standpoint, like working with Unity is actually really great because the name Unity is intended to be that you have all the platforms in one basically environment. It's unified, and so developing for HoloLens is very similar to developing for, you know, mobile, even Xbox, even desktop platforms. So all of that is kind of consolidated, but there's the added layer that you have to, like, you have a different input system, right? Basically, you only in the HoloLens you only have this tap gesture. And so you have to basically use the tap gesture and like the position of your hand to do everything that you can do with for example, if you're on a desktop, you have the entire keyboard. You can do so much more. So it's a little bit different in developing that way, and that's really in UI. And I think Kat could talk a little bit about that.
Kind of going off of that, did you guys integrate voice at all, or did you consider that? From a design perspective.
So we actually had we had spoken to a couple of people on the voice team. I don't know if we're allowed to say what team they're.
Microsoft.
With Microsoft. We had spoken to a couple of people at Microsoft, and basically we all came to the same conclusion, which was this is an application that's supposed to be used in public spaces more than in your personal or private, like, home experience. So it's going to cause there are going to be a lot more issues with it than using your, like, Amazon Alexa or your Google Home. You're going to run into a lot of auditory disruption. So it is not out of sight for us to use voice recognition and even sound recognition, but it was definitely going to be a problem for us in this first iteration.
And then I think from a design perspective, anyone who's put the HoloLens on likely agrees with me that the field of view is a little bit debilitating. So I think for me as a designer, it's just thinking about ways to be playful about the fact that it feels like you're looking through like a window to this virtual experience. So designing UI that fits well within that field of view. I totally am for pushing the boundaries of the technology, but I think right now, as the wearables are sort of in their infancy stage, it's on all of us to create experiences that fit and show off the capabilities of a device and acknowledge the limitations of them within design.
I was going to say, especially with aliasing, which you get a lot of in some of this user interface that we've been working on, it does become a little bit of an issue. And trying to figure out how we're developing and how we're showing the user what this product does, you do run into a lot of issues where I think UI becomes really, really important to the process of development and understanding what this product's actually, the output of this product actually is.
So you guys did a lot of user testing, both kind of during the hackathon and then after the hackathon when the product was sort of more or less, the prototype itself was complete. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, were there any things that assumptions that you made that turned out to be false, assumptions that you made that turned out to be super true?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So the thing that we came up against as well is that many of the people that we actually had used this at the hackathon especially had never used a HoloLens. So it just wasn't about acclimating them to our app. It was also about providing an experience, and I think that Kat and Kachina were so thoughtful about that in the UI design, in terms of the fact that this is something that people need to see that isn't something totally foreign from what they're already used to. And that was really important for us. And then when we were at Microsoft, in terms of the user testing we did, especially with their marketing and sales teams, that was really helpful because they really gave us a lot of ideas about, how can you create something that goes beyond just this demo, right? If you're going to scale this and put this in stores, you have to actually create a flexible architecture, which was something that we didn't think about initially. We just thought that, we could customize based on what we were doing, or that we could have one UI that would fit all these use cases. But no surprise, companies and brands actually said, wow, we could use this and add really cool customization. So then we thought internally, how do we take that insight and then create this flexible architecture for the future of the product that then we can adapt to different brand needs specifically, because they all have different ways that they want to showcase their product too. And we were very lucky that our initial UI was sort of so minimal, so product focused, so user focused that it was not so hard to think about how we would then scale to some customization for these companies.
Mm-hmm. So going off of that, I'll just do one more question and then we'll open it up to questions. what do you guys think the future of payments will look like in an AR world? Because just for me personally, I see things on the street, but for me, shopping is a very sort of drawn out process. It's like I like to look through lots of different links on Amazon and like browse them. What do you guys think that the future of payments will look like?
Machine vision, basically. As you said, shopping can be a really drawn-out process. Most people really don't like doing it at all. I don't even have enough time in my day to really do it. But I do see things just from experiencing reality, going outside, running into people. I do see things that catch my eye or interest me. And so it's having the ability to kind of start storing your profile and then linking this visual to other surrounding visuals, so that you can kind of get a better understanding of your personal profile, start to save time on your purchases and payment interactions. And yeah, hopefully it makes things a lot easier.
I think with this application, the potential is definitely there to sort of promote this consumerist lifestyle. That's definitely not lost on us. So I think both in design and also how the actual product works, it's really thinking critically about how you give people the opportunity to make the purchases they need to make, but not to prompt them to purchase anything that they don't in particular need. So for AR and payments, yes, we want you to be able to see something and purchase it, but we in no way want to like highlight or enunciate things for you that you may not necessarily have been interested in before. I think the tremendous potential of this augmented reality purchasing platform is that you can take away the mundane, which is to have to find your credit card, take it out, purchase it, so automating that through an augmented interface.
And then the other thing too, based on what you said, for a lot of people, it's not that we want to take away like the joy or the time involved if that's something that you like, because what we really think is interesting about the future of this as it relates to payments is that if you're wearing a device at all times, it's picking up all of this data about what you're actually interested in, and that data combined with the data that the user actually inputs themselves, we really hope that we can be like that sort of assistant to them, right? That even if, like let's say they forget that they need to get a present for their friend, and we see that it's integrated with like their calendar of social events, or we see that, when they're walking on the street, their eye always catches this certain thing. So being really mindful of how we share that information with them, but also providing just really helpful insights that sometimes like we don't always notice the things that we like, and we're really interested in that interplay with AR and payments.
There's a lot of deep ethical, philosophical questions in that answer. Okay, so we will open it up to questions now. Yes?
At a conference like this, 2/3 of us are used to wearing weird crap and making weird crap, and the other third is hoping to sell us weird crap. And in your real-life testing, how close is the public to being ready to wear weird crap and do weird gestures? The voice was a good example of that.
So yeah. So the question was, everyone at a conference like this is probably very familiar with the HoloLens gestures and AR gestures. But what was the experience? How close are we, in your experience with the user testing, how close are we to actually having users who aren't familiar with this stuff kind of intuitively understanding it?
Surprisingly, I think it comes down to price point, and I think it comes down to visibility of these products, the hardware, not necessarily the software. We did bring the HoloLens to New York for another AR summit, and we were doing some filming on the street, basically, and so many people stopped to check this piece of equipment out and try it out, and they didn't even understand really that it was the hardware that we had put software on. They really just thought it was this one integrated product. And just being able to talk to them and kind of get some understanding of, would you even really want this on you at all times? And of course it's going to become lighter weight, but it seems to be pretty universal that people were kind of ready to do this. And then of course I think what it really comes down to is price point. obviously the HoloLens is very expensive, and we can port this over to mobile, so that's kind of a little bit more universal. But getting people to use AR and feel comfortable using AR in public, I don't think that that was much of a problem. I think it was kind of along the lines of the first time you maybe saw somebody with headphones in when they were having a phone call or a Bluetooth. It was very uncomforting the first time that maybe people saw that, but now it's just so commonplace.
Yeah, I think that user testing session in New York was very interesting because half the people that approached us just approached us because they had never seen a HoloLens before and we looked like a robot. But playing up that experience that you might be able to give somebody their first hands-on testing with the HoloLens, I think I would argue that we are incredibly close to the public being ready for AR, and it pains me to admit it as an AR creator, but I think we're missing that killer app, that killer use case that really justifies the medium right now, and I think we're right sort of at the precipice of it, but I mean, Pokemon Go is a classic example. Did I play Pokemon Go every day? Yes. Did I play it in AR mode? No, because it drained my battery, and it just didn't really add anything to the user experience. So I think it's on everybody right now, everybody in particular here, to create experiences that need AR, and the users will follow.
I'm always wary of wearing VR in public because I don't want to turn into a meme. I don't want to just see myself on the internet.
When you're doing the gesture, you see a dress you like, and the first thing you're doing is that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, did you guys do any user testing with, like, without telling people how to use the HoloLens? Like, just, no?
Yeah. So the one thing that we found actually is that the gesture in the HoloLens is actually really difficult to teach people. This one is like, it has to be right to actually work. And a lot of people do like this weird like flick motion, or they do something different. So it's not quite intuitive enough yet. But I think in our HoloPay application, the cool thing is that it's actually passive. So you actually don't have to do any gestures to get information. You just look at what you're interested in, and it automatically gives you information. So you don't actually have to point at anyone who's like wearing a shirt that you like. It just automatically comes up. And so identifying those points of interest is another really cool problem to solve.
Yeah, and I was going to say, obviously, if the hardware is going to continue to change, and there are other companies coming out, the gesture is always going to change. And the only reason we kind of have this right now is because it's the device we're working with. We could have very well have done an input up here, but for showmanship, we keep that gesture. But we can make things more discreet. But as Anish was saying, it's more of that understanding the world around you and getting that feedback and information.
Kelly. So the question was, have you guys considered integrating HoloPay with other wearables like watches or anything that could sort of indicate selection in different ways?
Yeah, it's something that we definitely talked about as a group because Anish and I have a background working with VR and biometrics, so it's something that we're familiar with. But I think, as you said, like there's so many ethical questions with all of this, and so while it's really interesting for these proof of concept experiments to say, wow, how amazing if you could actually look at, someone's internal biometrics and then be able to tell if they were interested in something or how they felt in the moment, but then keeping that data secure and making sure that it didn't go into manipulation, I think is a different story. So we talked about it, and it's definitely possible, but like, do we really want to live in a future where even our biometrics are being tracked to help us buy stuff? I think is a question like we all could ask, right? This tech is so much fun to play with, to experiment with, but we always as a team really ask each other, like, is this something that's actually going to make it better? Like, is it needed for that? And I think that that's like a question that can still be answered.
I think being in the user experience side of it, neurofeedback would be phenomenal, just to understand how people are using the application, or how you can kind of get them to use the application even better and quicker.
I think the watch integration is really interesting because I think something that's missing from a lot of AR experiences right now is the tactile, and watches present us with the opportunity to give our users haptic feedback with what they're doing. So whether it be the subtle haptic feedback you get on a mobile device right now where you overswipe and it clicks, and just the subtlety of that, I think watches in particular, I would love to integrate that technology and use that aspect of it to create a little bit more of a holistic product.
Okay, it looks like we have one more question. Anyone? Yeah.
So I'm curious, talking about mobile AR, and specifically like pinch to zoom versus like physically moving closer to products. Like, what is? I'm assuming that you've done like some user testing. Like, have you guys decided on like users are just so like inground in being able to pinch to zoom like that's actually useful, or like is there some sort of like onboarding process, or like are we just like expecting users who like we're in San Francisco and so everybody's very tech forward, but let's say like in middle America, you know, let's say like a Gen Xer, like how would they expect it to like?
So the question was sort of how does the intuitiveness of interaction design sort of evolve with mobile AR?
So I think the easiest way to teach someone AR is to have them do nothing, literally nothing. Because I think a lot of this application is specifically driven towards user focus. And so if you're getting 3 pop-ups, whichever one you're looking at is the one you're probably focusing on. So that idea of pinch to zoom isn't really kind of there as a gesture anymore, but it's there as a gaze.
And I think even though pinch to zoom isn't a feature that we have, I know the iteration of UI that's in the video alludes to this gesture of mobile, which is what unfortunately all of our users have a lot of experience in. So it's taking down those aspects of mobile that they're familiar with, giving them sort of a scaffolding that they feel like, okay, I kind of know how this technology works, but I still have room to explore the pieces of it that, I don't necessarily have the capacity to do.
Yeah, so we actually built out HoloPay to a mobile device, and we did a little bit of user testing. The first iteration didn't have any pinch to zoom or anything, and people had to like move closer to the object, and we found that that was really not good, just because we actually had a lot of information that was readable in the HoloLens, but when you see it on a small mobile device, that text really is not readable. So what we have to do for a mobile device that we haven't done yet, but we have this idea for basically having this passive overlay in augmented reality that shows a very short description of what you're seeing, and then you would basically go into that object, you would select it, and then, so like basically you'd have like a few words that you can actually read on your screen, and it would be like a constant size on your screen, and then you click into it and you see the product information on a flat page beyond that. So the augmented reality part is really just in overlaying that first step to see all the objects around you and see like a brief description of it, and then more information and purchasing information would be on like a standard mobile page.
One thing that I've noticed too, and I was user testing an AR app, and there's definitely a clear dichotomy for me. I don't know if you guys agree, but between people who were, just sort of anecdotally speaking, people who were raised on desktops, so anyone over the age of like 18, I feel like we tend to look for buttons and clicks, and like even with a HoloLens, it's like this is kind of like a click. Whereas I think younger generations that were raised on mobile, they really do tend to look for swipes and pinches and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how interfaces evolve.
And once you put something in their hand, they stop. You put them in a VR experience without a controller, they walk around. You put something in their hand, they stop and just teleport everywhere.
Oh, wow, yeah. Okay, any final questions? We're about out of time. Quick question? Yeah.
What are you doing in terms of taking your work and taking it further? Are you individually doing different companies? Are you guys building a V2 of this?
The question is, what's next for HoloPay?
Yeah, so right now, as Julie alluded to, a part of the magic of our group is that we really view each other as like a tech collective right now. And we're all really interested in working together to continue to learn and to create the best possible experiences and products. And so we're very much interested in continuing to work on this. Obviously, it's not ready for consumer launch yet, but we're interested in just continuing to learn and then seeing where we could take it once it's at the point where we feel like people could really use it. We're just not necessarily at that point yet.
All right, thank you guys so much.